Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're just going to give a couple more minutes for people to jump on, and then we'll get started very soon. Okay, hello, everyone, and welcome to COVID Solutions for Responsive Schools. My name is Jessie with Lakeside, and so let me first thank each of you for the work that you're doing on the front lines of serving students in your communities across the country every day, and all the prepping and planning that you're doing. We want to recognize the endless hours that you're putting in during what's likely one of the most challenging times in your careers. So thank you very much. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please enter them into the chat feature, and we'll get to as many of those at the end of the webinar as we can. Today, we have Tiffany and McCleese and Nancy Lane on our panel, and they're going to share with us how to implement a remote serving program, considerations for classroom meal service, how to open safely with protections for staff and students in mind, and some product solutions to help meet the local, state, and federal guidelines. So Tiffany's going to kick us off, and she has served as the child nutrition coordinator for the West Claremont School District for over 4 years. And she has an additional 5 years of experience in school nutrition, and spent some time working as a supervisor in the food service department at a Virginia CLC and domiciliary. She's a registered dietetic technician, pardon me, and holds the SNS credential in school nutrition. Tiffany has also been named one of the 2020 Young Lion Award winners by FER Magazine and serves on the United Purchasing Cooperative of the Ohio River Valley Executive Board as the regional at-large representative for districts over 5,000. Tiffany is a firm believer that everything she has accomplished is in large part the result of working with and for such an amazing team. So Tiffany, I'm going to hand this over to you.
Thank you. Give me one moment here. I'm going to transition over to my screen. There we go. Let's see. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start just talking a little bit about some of the scenario planning we did here in West Claremont. And for those of you who do not know where that's at, we're on the east side of Cincinnati in Ohio. Kind of a middle or mid-sized district. We have about 8,500 students in our district, and we cover a fairly large geographic area. It's about 60 miles or so. So it's pretty spread out. So when we were going through our planning, we actually started with 3 different scenarios. So the first scenario is for a 5-day option where students would return to school with some other restrictions in place or guidance. And then we also are offering an online academy option for those parents who choose to do not choose to send their students back to school for the return of the school year. So right now, when we started planning this first scenario, 80 to 85% of the students planned to return. And that data was actually pulled from a parent survey the district had sent out towards the end of June. So of course, data being what it is, we're still continuing to survey parents to gain feedback and get a general idea of what their thought process is and what they're comfortable with. So those numbers could change, but we're pretty confident that these will be the numbers that we're working with. So all of our elementary buildings have been determined that we're going to engage in breakfast in the classroom. So what's really awesome about that is we actually implemented a breakfast in the classroom program about 3 years ago and have been looking for ways to implement additional breakfast in the classroom programs. But we really were having some challenges in our district to do that. So and the fact that we're able to do that now, it's not in the best of situations or scenarios, because my go-to is always to phase things in. And right now we're looking at rolling this program out brand new in 6 different elementaries. So definitely some challenges with that, but it's a really exciting addition to what our breakfast model is going to look like in the future. So our high school and middle school students are planning to participate in like a grab and go breakfast program utilizing mobile kiosks, or it could be breakfast is prepackaged and set at a designated location within the cafeteria or the serving line, and students would just come pick that breakfast up and take it back to their classroom. We're looking at 50% capacity in all communal spaces. So it could be, I kind of use that to encompass cafeterias, gyms. It could be outside picnic areas, weather permitting, and then any other type of common areas like study spaces and even the academic wing, classrooms. So of course, remaining 50% will receive meals in those alternative eating spaces, and just putting that information in here. And it's kind of a duplicate, it's just different ways of wording it, but it's something that we're really excited to be able to offer, but it does present its own set of challenges. And we're gonna look at those a little bit further in some of the different things that we're going to be implementing to help combat that. So scenario 2 is a 50% capacity plan, and the difference between scenario 1 and this scenario is that the 50% capacity plan, which has also been known as a hybrid type planning, actually starts with establishing cohorts. So cohort 1 would come to school Monday and Tuesday with remote learning Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And cohort 2 would come to school Thursday, Friday with remote learning Monday and Tuesday. That should actually say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Yeah, that's correct. And then Wednesday would just be like, there would be no students on site. We'd use that as a deep cleaning day. So with this scenario, some of the big things that I wanted to kind of pick out is that the no drinking fountains, breakfast in the classroom, and the 50% capacity, that's going to be present in pretty much every scenario planning that we've had. When I say no drinking fountains, the fountains will still be operational, but students will not be able to drink directly from the fountain. They'll have to actually refill bottles, or I shouldn't say refill, fill bottles, or they'll have to ask cashiers for disposable cups. According to some of the guidance we've received, they cannot drink something out of a container and then refill that same container. So again, that's the guidance on that continues to change, and we've engaged in a lot of conversation with our local Board of Health to help us identify when those changes happen and how that is going to impact our service. So this is just scenario 2 continued, but option 1, and this is for students in grades 6 through 12, remote learning on campus with opportunities for personal support. It's again, no drinking fountains. The grab and go breakfast options would be in place, and all students would eat in their classrooms. And then of course, the 50% capacity in the cafeteria during lunch, with the other 50% of students physically present in the building being able to eat in alternative dining spaces. So scenario 3 is more of the remote learning, and when we think of this, we're actually, what comes into my mind is the emergency feeding that we all engaged in over the spring to the end of the school year. And the difference being is that we've had the entire summer to plan and fine tune what worked and what didn't from that initial planning phase. So I'm not as concerned about implementing something like this. My main goal was to just find something that we'd be able to pivot on very quickly and implement very quickly. And I'll talk more about that when we get into menus and some of the other program changes that we'll be looking at. One thing I do want to point out is that our remote learning and the online academy are two totally different formats. So if you'll remember, scenario one was the 5-day return to school with an online academy option. It's a completely different program format than what students would experience if we were to start back to school and have another shutdown for any reason. So that's going to play a big role in those student and parent surveys that go out and engaging feedback from parents on what their ideas are as far as sending their students to school at the beginning of the year. Okay, and I wanted to actually bring up something with federal, state, and local guidance. So we've been engaging in a lot of conversation with our local Board of Health, and they're very receptive, very open to questions, and I can say I've utilized that quite a bit. They hear from me, I would say, almost weekly anymore. So it's very important to establish that relationship. And I took it one step further. I'm not only communicating with my inspectors. That's very important to do, but I went one step over that and actually reached out to the Director of Health for my county. When that happened, we're able to really drive down into some of the inconsistent terminology that's been used. I was definitely guilty of this. For instance, I'll give you an example. Using the term self-serve in the Dine Safe orders, which are the secondary little bubble there, those are the orders that the Board of Health are using to pull the information from to establish regulations and orders for school districts. But it's so much broader that they really have to be mindful about how they communicate that to us. Myself as an operator, what happens is when I read the Dine Safe order and I see self-serve, my mind automatically goes to those self-serve bars in our schools. Well, not all of them are dealing with bulk food. We have some pre-cupped or pre-packaged items that students can self-vend. According to Dine Safe order and according to my most recent information from our County Board of Health, students are permitted to self-vend items, even if they are in a self-serve area, like a salad bar that maybe is being utilized for those self-vended items. We can use air screen coolers and have the students reach in to select their pre-packaged meal. The rule of thumb here is that everything has to be in a closed container. So once I understood the terminology that, when we say self-serve, what they were thinking of as opposed to what I was thinking of, it really helped us to establish what we were and were not able to do. What's really frustrating for K-12 operators is when you're communicating something and you think you're doing it well and you're getting told no. And it doesn't make sense to you why you're being told no. But once you really break down those barriers of communication, you're able to find out that it's just a miscommunication and you can move beyond that. So I really encourage everyone to be aware of CDC guidance. That's where the Dine Safe order and the CDC kind of go hand in hand, but CDC I look at as more of a recommendation. Dine Safe orders are actual orders for your state. The ones I have listed are for Ohio, like I said, I'm an Ohio school, and then the counties are taking information from the Dine Safe order and fitting that to meet the needs of, or to explain more how that's going to look for schools at the county levels and at the district levels. Okay. And then one of my biggest questions when I first started planning was, where do you start? It's such a huge plan that you have to get in line, and there are so many different routes that you can take. It was a little overwhelming in the beginning. One of the best things that happened for us is that we actually established those scenarios. We just put a broad spectrum. This is what our plan is. Now we have to get into the details. We started with what we knew. So creating that workable document, we established a Google Share Drive, documents that allowed each key stakeholder to input thoughts, concerns, and goals for each scenario and establish bullet points for every objective. We identified potential partners for every objective listed and engaged in discussion. Two different times that stick out to me during the initial planning phase in my district is one, when I first began looking at student ID cards. and trying to determine what would work best to decrease touch points during the meal checkout process for my department. Our main goal was to find something that could work for all of our needs. For example, breakfast in the classroom, grab and go meals, in-classroom dining, etc. We looked at what was out there and what was available or in the works. After searching, it was determined that my department would provide student ID cards with a barcode. The cards would be used with our current point of sale scanner and pin pad combos for every meal and service type. Through discussion during our district leadership team scenario planning, it was determined that student ID cards could be implemented and used across the district for multiple purposes. And again, that's like library use, technology, my department, and so on and so forth. And the last thing that we wanted to do was create a plan and then be told that we weren't allowed to do something and need to start over. On top of all of this, now it's a district initiative and not solely one of child nutrition. So through all of that, one of the most important things is just asking questions. A lot of what I realized through those conversations I would not have found if I had not continued to ask questions, and just making sure that your communication is clear, concise, and consistent. I've always said, and this is something I'm a huge proponent for, we all have different communication styles, and just because I feel like I'm a good communicator doesn't necessarily mean that I am. It just means that that's my feeling. That's how I interpret what I'm saying. And what I found is more often than not, when you're communicating something to 3 different people or 300 different people, you're going to get a vast array of understandings from what's being communicated. So it's always better to ask questions and to continue to ask questions until you have a really, really good understanding of what they're saying, and you can reach a consensus. All right, so classroom delivery. This is something that it was determined in my district that we're not going to use in-classroom dining for lunch. However, that may change. As with everything else surrounding COVID, this is very fluid. What was determined is that like I said, with breakfast in the classroom, now that we're rolling it out to 6 sites at a time, as opposed to just 7, or I'm sorry, to just 1, we had to really find a plan that would work, especially my staff's off right now. I mean, as of most of our staffs are. It's summer break, so buildings have minimal staff present. So I'm needing to establish a plan that I can later work on with my team when they return to the district. And of course, I'm sending out constant communication to them throughout the summer to make sure that we're all on the same page. But the biggest one that stuck out to me is I need to find out what the delivery routes would be, because I have several schools that are they're 2 floors or they're 3 floors, and I'm not sure how that would even work. As I said, the current breakfast in the classroom program I have, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of back and forth between classrooms and the kitchen to restock product. The cart system we use is great, but it's really labor intensive. So I had to look at, do I want to use the same system, or do I want to explore alternative options? And one of the great things that has happened is that we're seeing a lot of new products come out to help us with these alternative models. And through researching some of those new items that have been established, I found several different cart systems that were really good options for my needs, so for the needs of the district. So one of the things I did was I pulled building maps to assist with my route planning. That was the easiest, most efficient way that I could get a quick jump start on this. And I actually pulled those by communicating with my operations director. So what he sent me was a general overview. It was like your tornado drills, your tornado maps, or fire maps, you know, if there's an alarm pulled or something. So it's very, very detailed about the mechanics, about doors, you know, entrances, exits, all of that. So, and that worked really well because it was able to show me where everything was at. But I needed further information about classroom sizes and about which classes are assigned to which areas. And I couldn't get that from those maps. So I went another step further and actually contacted the building principals. And they were all too happy to share their building maps they manage for their individual locations. It took maybe 30 minutes to gather data for my entire district. Through doing that, I was able to map out routes to define how many trips it would take between the cafeteria and the rooms, how much could be loaded onto each of those carts, which also determined how many trips were made. And a step further than that was collecting some data from our EMIS coordinator. And that was invaluable information because he took it a step further and told me what the average class size was per grade for that school. And I got that for the entire district. So once I had all of this information, I looked at, as it says, how many grades per floor? Are there multiple floors? And then again, the cart and kiosk meal capacity. So once I found all of this, I was able to determine that we can serve roughly 6 classrooms each time before needing to refill the carts. Because we will be using bus tubs to pack several of our meals, the tubs can be prepared and ready to go for the server when they return to the kitchen to refill. We can serve 1 grade containing 6 classrooms per trip. And this is with the average classroom size being around 24. We have some that were slightly over that and some that were slightly under, but that's a general number. After determining this, I actually scheduled a meeting with the building principals and explained that we could easily serve 1 floor for in-classroom dining if we determined to go that route at lunchtime, provided we weren't expected to deliver to multiple floors in the same day, because it takes longer to load carts onto the elevators to deliver meals due to elevator capacity restrictions and just the sheer size of these carts. The principal stated that if they determined to use the in-classroom dining in that building, they would assign it by floor in an effort to ensure efficiency. And that was huge. That's something else that otherwise would have been an oversight for us if I had not started that conversation with that particular principal. And of course, it's going to vary a little bit between buildings because the buildings are different. As you know, your students are different, your staffing's different, even, you know, as I was saying, just the building layout in general is different. So it's always good to engage in these conversations and you can really drill down what's going to work and what's not. Operational considerations. So how do the new program implementations affect staff? So this is always where I start when I think about entering or implementing any new programming. And I always look at how's it going to affect my staff hours? Will I need to hire additional staff? Are we able to modify and stagger existing staff schedules to meet the social distancing requirements? Of course, additional training is going to be needed, but what is that going to look like? And then are you working with a modified school calendar? This is something I'm sure everyone has experienced at some point. I can't speak for other districts, but in ours, we had a modified school calendar at the end of the school year. We actually ended the year a little bit earlier than originally scheduled. That being said, there's a possibility we could begin the school year later than what we had originally anticipated. Another consideration is, are there a decrease in serving days due to remote student days? So in our student calendar, we are in discussion regarding implementing remote student days throughout the year. And I can't speak to the justification behind this, but I know that they're being built into the calendar as a potential, and looking at how it impacts budget. You know, are you able to modify staff calendars so you're not paying for your staff on those days, or are you able to package meals and send home for students on those days? I know there are some waivers in place that will allow you to do that, but it's, you know, looking at what's going to work for your district and what's not. So, and another question is, you know, are you providing meals for remote student days? So as I was saying with the online academy option, that was an immediate, like, okay, we're losing that participation, and what's that going to look like? How does it impact your budget? All right. So looking at equipment needs, once you have a general idea of what your scenarios are going to look like and what program changes you want to make, you can start drilling further down into what your equipment needs are. For instance, for in-classroom dining, mobile carts, kiosks, and insulated bags, scanners, tickets. Do you need insulated bags? That's something else. I mean, just because they're available and out there, it doesn't mean that you absolutely have to get those. We actually have insulated bags for one of our breakfast in the classroom programs, and like I said, with using those bus tubs, we're still packaging everything, but we're utilizing shelf-stable milk. We're using breakfast kits that are shelf-stable. So time temperature control really isn't a concern in that regard. And then looking at funding, is it available? Where is it coming from? This COVID is really, it's been very hard for a lot of districts. Some districts have lost thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So looking at your food service fund, what's available, is it available? And then if it's not, being prepared to enter into those difficult situations where you have to have that difficult conversation about needing help. And it may have to come from the general fund or if grant funds are available or donations. I know a lot of that depends on districts. So just being aware of that and that's a potential item that you're going to have to eventually come across or address is very important. Some potential grant sources I wanted to share are more for a nationwide. Of course, there are more opportunities at your local level, so I encourage you to do some additional research with that. But these are some that I've actually worked with, and they've been fabulous to work with. But No Kid Hungry, Children's Hunger Alliance, Gen Youth, USDA. USDA's grants typically come out in the fall. So just being aware that those are going to become available, what the application process looks like, and who to contact if you don't know how to go about doing this. I know you can get really far with just doing a Google search, but with our USDA grants, I've always just reached out to my consultant with any questions, and they've pointed me in the right direction if I've not been able to find the information. Rule of thumb here is just don't leave anything on the table. If you have a problem with remembering to do something, set up reminders in your calendar, in your email, whatever needs to be done to help you remember to make sure that you're meeting those application deadlines, because there are a lot of additional help out there if you know where to look to find it. Okay, so menu planning, that's something I'm still working on. I'm much further than what I was, but some of the big pointers for me were just looking at some of the procurement documentation that we have to manage. Do you need new RFPs or RFQs or any contract renewals or terminations? And on top of that, making sure that you're communicating with your vendors and your manufacturers to establish what do they need from you to help you receive the product you need when you need it. So forecasting reports, they don't need to be precise. And I'm sure you've seen some of that communication from those that you work with, but just having a general idea of what your usage is going to look like is going to be loads more informative for them and helpful for them to be able to make sure that you have what you need when you need it. The last thing we want to do is get into a situation where you're placing orders and your product just isn't there. So definitely give them those numbers and just be clear if you're not really sure about those numbers, and continue to communicate and update them as needed. Ask vendors for velocity reports. Those reports are available and track your purchases from every year. So when you get those, you can actually use that data to help establish your base numbers or an estimated number for this year. Something I've been doing is pulling that data and then pulling my participation by item data from my point of sale software. Using those two, it's helping me get a pretty good idea of what our usage is going to look like. Again, it's taking me a long time to do that, and I'm checking my vendors and my manufacturers off as I'm going, but making sure that you're taking steps to communicate those things is very, very important. And again, I keep going back to constant communication. If you need to make a change, notify your vendors, your brokers, your manufacturers, anyone who is a key player in that supply chain, to make sure that what you need is available. Something you need to keep in mind is some of these shelf-stable prepackaged items, not every district was using them prior to COVID-19. With COVID-19, now everyone is vying for a lot of the same products. So there are going to be shortages, and the more information that you're giving and the quicker you're getting that information out, the better it's going to be for you and for your district. And then providing a school calendar. So, update communications as necessary. The school calendar helps your vendors in a number of ways. The biggest being, when should they even bring your first order? So just communicating when your expectation is of placing that first order is of a big help for them. It tells them when to start stocking your items. Will it affect your plan, or will this affect when you plan to place your first order? So if there's a calendar change and they push school back 2 weeks, and you had planned to place your orders to come in a week in advance of the original start date, now you're looking at a 3-week difference with products sitting in your kitchens. So if that's not a big deal and you can manage that, that's perfectly fine. But for those districts who maybe have limited space, or the possibility of working with older equipment, which means that you run the risk of your freezers or your refrigerators going down. So keeping those things in mind definitely helps when you're planning for your back to school. And then of course, just making sure you're communicating that when you expect to place the first order goes a long way. And then menu creation. So looking at your menu considerations, and I've heard a lot of talk about this, but I can tell you what we've been doing here. We've actually limited our entree options for students. At our high school, we had anywhere from 20 to 25 options every day. We have a fairly large food court. They could come in and kind of pick and choose what they wanted, and a lot of it was customizable. And then the cycle menus I worked with were 4-week cycle menus. And then of course we had kind of a creations concept for a second page menu at the high school level that offered additional items that were static. They were just there every week. So what we've chosen to do district wide is actually go to a 2-week cycle menu. For us, it's much more manageable. And we've made it a combination of hot and cold based on feedback that we received. We were doing a lot of the cold items during the emergency shutdowns, and right now students want to have something hot. They want to be able to have that option, so making sure that you're doing a combination is extremely important as well. And then we've built in some celebration days just to keep it fun. One of my go-tos is foodelementary.com. There's actually a great book that you can use, and it talks about all the food holidays. It even gives recipe examples, and it just helps to get the creativity flowing. You may not be able to do what that exact recipe is, or do it in the way that the food holiday calendar is telling you to do it, but you get some really, really good ideas. And the kids really have fun. For instance, we do a World Smile Day and a National Do Something Nice Day. And we just took a standard single serve cheese pizza, put a couple mini pepperonis and a smile, bell pepper smile, and we just called it World Smile Day. And the kids loved it, from pre-K all the way to our seniors. Our seniors were coming back for extras. So it's really a great thing. It helps boost participation, and it'll help keep morale high. It's just what's better than seeing these kids come in with a big smile on their face because they're excited about what's for lunch. So you want to keep that in your menu planning when you're creating these. And then identify what items you use that would work for your needs. So we actually took our menus from last year and went through and crossed out items that were too labor intensive and looked at what items are relatively easy to prepare, are popular with our students, and we could easily pivot and use the same item in the event there was an emergency shutdown. And we were able to come up with a pretty solid 2-week cycle menu. And one of the considerations was using one item for multiple recipes. So for instance, we have chicken tenders at the high school level. We use those chicken tenders in our wraps. We also use them in our salads. So it's just looking at things like that would help you to kind of build that menu, and just be prepared that it most likely it will change, and being okay with that. A big important part of what we're doing right now is just maintaining that flexibility through all of our planning scenarios. So one of the things we're working on right now is providing assembly instructions to help boost efficiency in the production lines. So we also want to make sure that it's consistent. So the same product or the same recipe that's being made at the middle school is being made at the high school. It should look identical, no matter which building they go to. So just ensuring that those instructions are available and easy to see for our staff is extremely important. And then of course, use your entitlement dollars. So your entitlement is there. It's important, especially with all the COVID planning, that you utilize that resource. Utilize your USDA foods, your state commodities or brown box, your NOI or net off invoice items, and those DoD dollars. DoD, for those of you who don't know, is your fresh fruits and vegetables. Making sure that you pull primarily from there first. I know it's not always easy to do that. It's always good to have a secondary vendor, but that's a way to help provide some relief in your budget. And then again, with net off invoice, you're giving entitlement dollars for processing, of any item. So chicken, pounds to chicken provider for chicken nuggets or chicken tenders, or beef for beef patties. It just takes a certain percentage off of that total case price and helps to provide some relief in the invoicing when you get those. All right, and then this is just a sample K5 week 1 cycle menu. Now, like I said, I did a 2-week cycle menu. I didn't want to put too much information here. This is just a quick snapshot. It is possible, and they're very similar depending upon which grade you're looking at. But these are items that we served, last year. So we want to create some normalcy and also provide those more popular items and that provide a little bit more comfort for our students. All right, student orders. This is something completely new for my district, and is something that we work really hard to identify what our needs were. So when we found this software program, it's for student and or parents to place orders. They can review order history, which is phenomenal, and it allows for ordering up to a 1-month period. What happens is our cafeteria would receive reports for any orders placed once a deadline has been met, and we can assign cafeteria staff to manage this, which for us it would be our managers and possibly the backup or the assistant manager. Also, teachers can review these orders. So what's perfect for us is we're going to be utilizing this in several different areas, mainly our K5 at breakfast time, and teachers can actually go in and make sure students have had an opportunity to order in the event their parent may have forgotten. So, and that's prior to the date of service. And you can establish those cutoff timelines for when you are no longer accepting online orders. In the event that happens, they're only able to be approved upon request to the cafeteria manager. So a phone call, an email, something would have to be made. And that's something else you set up in the system about what that process looks like. All right, and in high school, actually we'll have a specific designated location to pick up mobile meals. This is, so we completed a walkthrough of the building with our high school manager prior to summer break to identify a good place for the pickup location to be established. And through the process, we decided that the senior courtyard would be the best place for us. Not only is the location in the academic wing of the building, and it will help us to capture business and participation that we may otherwise have missed for those students who don't even go to the cafeteria. They don't want to go to the lines or deal with the rush of getting through the cafeteria. They just decide to go right out to the courtyard and enjoy time with their friends. So the mobile order software will be utilized, and although it is primarily to assist with our breakfast in the classroom, breakfast in the classroom orders at the elementary level, it will also be utilized for our West Claremont Online Academy orders. So these meals will actually be packaged for 1 week at a time and will be available for pickup in each building. We're still working on ways to establish the proper pickup times and the appropriate contacts per building, as well as the appropriate area for pickup. I have plans to meet with the operations director. We actually were able to establish some really good planning maps during the emergency shutdown that we plan to duplicate and use again. We got a lot of really positive feedback about doing those planning maps to show pickup locations, and we also list pickup times and things of that nature. So I'm supposed to be meeting with him sometime this week to do that, but have every confidence that we'll be able to come to a conclusion that will work for everyone. So, and again, it's something that, again, it's very fluid, could change tomorrow depending on governor orders, but it's really nice to have these planning scenarios in place and drilling down into the basics, because even if it changes, you can tweak a little bit of this information to make it fit whatever change may occur. So additional service considerations. We actually do a lot with our point of sale integrated vending machines. And this is something that I actually got into my first year with the district, and it does increase a la carte availability. It allows our students to purchase the a la carte items without traveling through the cafeteria. They can utilize their account funds. There is no cash transaction, which we're really pushing this year. We are doing no cash. It's primarily online payments, or they can send in a check, but the check has to be sent in prior to the service lines starting. And then, of course, sanitizer stations will be posted for customers in each vending location. The student pre-order a la carte options, that's speaking more towards a Google Share document to take student a la carte orders in the event they have been assigned to a different area for lunch. It allows for delivery with the meal, for in-classroom dining, and those alternative spaces. Through providing a la carte items only through the vending machines, we actually did see an increase in sales in all buildings utilizing the program. And while it's certainly a benefit, it's not the main reason we first implemented these. The student checkout process is expedited, and there's less opportunity for product shrinkage, which is always a concern when you have a large group of students and you have products available to be picked up. So it's definitely provides some reassurance for the manager in how to account for inventory. And then Google Sheets for a la carte purchasing are extremely beneficial and permit any mobile orders to be placed and served without students needing to come into the cafe at all. And I'm going to turn it over to Nancy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was amazing. For all of you who are furiously scribbling notes down, just a reminder, we will be sending out a recording after the webinar, as well as a PDF of the presentation. So we will be sending that out later. So I do want to introduce everyone to Nancy, and she's going to take us on more of a visual journey of kind of what Tiffany's solutions look like in action. So Nancy is a designer specializing in visual merchandising and product concepts, and she has experience working with operators in all food service markets. She spent many years as a dealer consulting with clients to enhance their presentations and to drive sales through merchandising and menu planning. So she's currently serving on the Industry Advisory Council for the School Nutrition Association. And she's also working on helping food service operators on reopening plans that will support a functional and safe post-COVID-19 atmosphere. So I am going to pass this over to Nancy. Just one moment. All right, Nancy, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I have my screen up and you can see the serving lines. Okay, thank you. I want to say thanks to Jesse and thanks Tiffany. The information has been just amazing in sharing all the things that you're doing trying to reopen the school. Today I want to talk about product solutions on equipment, social barriers, and sanitizing. Here's a great example of a serving line. So when you're setting up, remember how we talked about mapping? This is another great example. The students will enter, you can see the arrows going around and coming out to an exit. The pink is for additional barriers to be installed in a serving line, and the green is 6 feet apart. So it's really nice because you can also see the staff behind here. So this just gives you a nice roadmap if you're putting documents together or if you have to present. Take some time, pull out those blueprints, and this will really help you make decisions on where you want to put things, how you want to move equipment around. Again, this is 3 different serving lines. This is what they're getting ready to do for the fall to reopen. And also, here is breakfast all day. So there's multiple ways of looking at snackification, handheld, grab and go. There is things that you want to think about when you're looking at equipment. There's now carts that can be motorized. So if you want to move them across the school grounds, out into the courtyards, it's got a rabbit speed and a turtle speed. And so you can go ahead and have it motorized so it's easier to move and transport. Look at ways for storage, and also too, the presentation is very important when you're looking at grab and go and breakfast all day. Here's a great example of a grab and go, and this was pre-COVID. And this
Oh, hey,
shows
Nancy,
you a
would you
great
mind
example.
pulling that up for us?
Yes. Do you
Thank
not see
you.
it?
No, we're seeing the serving lines.
Okay. Well, can you take it back over?
I certainly can. Just one second.
Thank you.
All right, Nancy, we're at grab and go.
Okay, thank you. Here is another great example of grab and go. So when you saw when I was talking about the other unit, that just had multiple layers of merchandising and making choices. You really need to make sure you communicate with your students, they understand what they're choosing so they can make a quick decision and the right decision. Here's a great example to the right. You can see where there's entrees and choices, and you're doing this by presenting it to the customer. And we'll go on to multifunctional equipment. Make sure that when you're purchasing your equipment that you can use it in multiple ways. Here's a great example. You've got the breakfast in the classroom in the morning, and then that's a magnetic peel. In the afternoon, it would be a sharing cart for the curbside pickup. So there's multiple ways to use things. It also has a cutout in the top for a full-size opening. Again, you want your equipment to function and move and be for the future also. Classroom meal delivery carts. COVID really pushed us into thinking outside the box. What can we do to put something that's easy that you can transport? And Tiffany was talking about that when you're mapping out these classrooms and you have to deliver to multiple classrooms. These carts all connect together. There's 3 in a row, and they hold multiple units of food. So when you're pre-packaging, maybe the pre-order, you can go ahead and these carts would be something that you would drop off in the classroom. They can be used to also be used to, each shelf holds 2 bus tubs. You can also put milk crates on there. This is something that just, again, look at your equipment and look at your menu and your options so that you choose the right pieces. Classroom dining. Here's a great example. You might be pre-packaging and pre-ordering, and you want to go ahead and just roll that right into the classroom or out into the courtyard. You've got the coolers to hold for the cold drinks, and then the pre-packaged meals are up on top. I'm going to move on to social distancing. Wow, this is a big one. So how to maintain social distancing? It's tough among the students. So here's some great examples. Again, using the pieces on the floor, spacing them 6 feet apart, but also communicate up at eye level. Not everybody looks down at the floor at first. And this is another great example of maybe producing a video so that the students know before they even come to the school exactly what they're going to be doing. And the barrier over here to the right, it has the wheels to make it mobile. It's very stable. It's also 6 feet apart. You would put an enter sign here, and then you would have a stop here. So again, there's so many different things that you can do for social distancing, but make sure it's clear so that students aren't confused when they get there. Also to have them go on your website. Satellite feeding is very important. Again, you want to spread the students out. You can see to the right that we have a unit right here that is different pieces that are connected together. And then this could be taken apart and maybe moved into a cafeteria. There's plexi in the middle that you can see that goes up on top of the sneeze guards and extends that. So you want to make sure that you protect the staff and the students. Over to the left, you can see the 2 counters, and those are totally wrapped in the plexi, and they have an opening where you could pass the food through. This might be a custom order or maybe something that they're going to order. And then you would, again, protecting the students and protecting the staff. Sanitation is next. Very important. Number 1, I have listened to webinars and panels, and the one thing that comes up every time is safety. They want to feel safe before they get there. Students going to college are the same, and high school students are the same. They want that safety. They want to make sure that they see somebody's cleaning. They want to understand that they feel safe and that they can be in areas still to communicate with their friends. The one thing that also came out of this is more departments are working together than ever before in a school district. And so you've got facilities and transportation are now working with dining services. And they're understanding who will fill the hand sanitizing station, who's in charge of cleaning, when will it be cleaned. You know, just in talking to Tiffany, she goes, it's been amazing how well everybody is trying to work together to solve this. Some pop-up or hot water hand sinks are very important. You should have these definitely. You need hand sinks in a lot of locations for the students. This is just a standard portable one that would plug into the wall. And again, it has a soap dispenser, it's got the heater, and now the new thing is touchless. You're gonna see more touchless things coming in the fall, and there's touchless faucets. Pop-up examples, here is a great one that is showing you here in the left bottom corner. This is a serving line for lunch. This was a school district in Wisconsin, and they last year already were serving the students for lunch for about an hour. So they've already kind of had this plan in place where they've got the students scattered throughout the building. And this location was in front of the library. So they set up the area so that they could get a complete lunch and go into the library and sit and eat. And then over to the right, it was outside as concessions, but this might be an opportunity, you know, like Tiffany was talking about the outside picnic area, that you could roll out the unit and use it outside for another lunch line or breakfast. And the next pop-up is going to be a coffee cafe. So it was interesting. In January, I was working with Tiffany on this, and we started to roll out a pilot program to see what would happen. And she increased her breakfast, and things are going great. We were working on this for SNA, ANC in Nashville, and we were going to have a presentation. Well, COVID totally changed that. But now she's looking at the unit, and that might be a great unit for mobile pickup, and maybe also an additional line for lunch or breakfast. So the unit, again, using different pieces to make it outside of the cafeteria has helped. And this is another one that came out of COVID. This is called a Pop Mart. This is another manufacturer. They created this unit so that when you walk up, the hand sanitizer's outside, and then you would walk in, and it would be pre-ordered or pre-made or kind of like a la carte items that you could grab. But the neat part is it's on a container, and if you look on the bottom, you can see there's the 2 holes for a forklift. So this can be picked up and moved around in different areas. And the sharing cart. So we talked about multifunctional. This is the cart. This is being used at one of the schools. It's for take-home meals, curbside pickup, showing the support. And I thought it was very interesting that students nowadays, the Gen Z, they love to cook. And, you know, but they prefer videos over recipes. Maybe take the opportunity to have some of your staff do some quick videos, showing them how to make a sandwich or showing them how to prepare their meal that they're taking home with them. So there's just ways to connect with the students and share tips and ideas. And this is the mobile kiosk. Again, make sure that you understand your menu, what happens with your equipment, what do you need to order, and using this as, can you get it through doors, in the elevator? Do I need it to be refrigerated? Hot cabinets? How many times do I plan on using it? And you heard a lot of that information from Tiffany talking about designing the menu and working with the equipment. So we want to wrap this up with saying, show passion and pride in what you do, and always remember to have fun and smile. Even under the mask, we can tell you're smiling with your eyes. We just want to say thank you again for attending the webinar. Please send in any questions. We would love to see photos and ideas of what you're doing also. And the number one thing is please be safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. We do have a couple of questions that have come up. We have a couple minutes left here that we can answer some of those. This one, I believe, is more for you, Tiffany. We have a question about how can you set up student ordering?
Yeah, so that's a conversation. I actually just reached out to my current point of sale provider. I know there are a lot of different companies out there right now that offer the mobile ordering option. So I can't really speak. I know they all look different. The one that I'm going to be using is actually brand new. They took the feedback from their customers and they are tweaking their existing software to meet our needs. So once they had a workable plan, I kind of gave some deadlines when I needed the information, and they pitched it to me, and I loved it. It meets all of my needs. So what's going to happen is it's another module in my existing software that I can establish a link for the mobile order or a QR code or something like that. And again, I haven't been through the training, so they're going to get more detailed with the specifics, but it will allow students, there'll be a student login, there will be a staff login. So the staff can actually have access to the backside of that software, and then the parents and students have access to the just placing the orders. They can't really go back and do anything else, but we're able to track history from that. We're able to pull those reports that show, what was ordered. They can order for up to a month, which is phenomenal, especially in the event, that we do have to go to emergency feeding. So, how we're going to implement that. After we get that training, we're actually taking a week to drill down the specifics of a procedure. And once we get the procedure done for each grade level, we're going to push that out to our district leadership and allow them to give us some additional feedback so we can tweak it and make some additional changes before releasing it to our students, parents, and publishing it on our website.
Wonderful. We do have a comment from another participant. They said that they use iSight and Link, and they have an online ordering system. Another question that has come up, for those new to creating more grab and go items, what's kind of the formula for that?
Yeah, so that's just depending upon your district. I know you can make anything kind of a grab and go, but one of my biggest is we have a yogurt meal for elementary students. They absolutely love it. And no matter that it's on the menu every day of the week, that's one of my biggest participation items on any given menu day, maybe with the exception of pizza. But it's really easy to assemble. It's utilizing a lot of your USDA commodity items. And the rule of thumb for me has always been to package my items to where it's, depending on grade, my meat component, my grain components, and then I want to have at least a half a cup of a fruit or a vegetable, preferably both. The idea is if they pick that up and they get their milk, that's all they'll need to do. So if you can do that with anything you're currently using, then you have a grab and go item that will make it easier on your team in the long run and hopefully help you boost participation.
Great. Well, thank you, Nancy and Tiffany, so much for your expertise and taking the time today. And thank you to all of our attendees for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us. We will send out a recording and the PDF of the presentation later. But any other additional questions you have can be sent to hello@elakeside.com. Whatever form the start to your school year takes, we wish you the best of luck and good health. So thank you, everyone.